Hey everyone, it's Book of Katherine. So in this spot, I filmed my first Oscars 2018 spot, and I talked about Harvey Weinstein. And I wrote about Harvey Weinstein again today in my news feed because I figured something out this morning. And I know I'm not doing well. I know I said that there's some bad things going on. There are bad things going on, but all that aside, this broke through it. Do you remember in that Oscar 2018 thing that I talked to you about? Do you actually remember it was a two-part Oscars 2018 thing that I talked to you about. And in it I said, Harvey Weinstein's not the only guy. He's not the only guy. He's not. He's he is an example of what to expect. He is a good, if you women read about what he does of going into a hotel room, doing his business in a hotel room, you can just pretty much expect that when you go to Hollywood of men that are executives at that level. Men who don't are the very big exception. Now, that being said, there are men that are way worse. We're talking, we've seen some of it. We've seen some of it talked about, and the Disney director and things like that, and the things they talk about on their feeds, and things with kids and things like that. And I think all of them are criminal acts. But cutting off babies' heads and things like that, that's a special kind of hell. I think we can all agree. It's all hell, but it's a special kind of hell. All right. So, but my point is that when I talked about it, I said the next day I said at the end of it, I said, now let's talk about some movies to do. And I said I want to talk to you about why I think they chose him. Now, what's interesting is that it's been a while now, and the Me Too movement has, we've seen it over a year. And I want to point out that no other executives have been touched. No other executives. If you list out the titles of everyone who's been touched, it's almost like a mathematical flowchart. It's almost mathematical because they choose what stories to air and they choose what stories to silence. Because every woman in Hollywood has a story about, you could go, so every woman in Hollywood has a story, and they are choosing which stories to air, and choosing which ones to silence. For example, Bryan Singer, he has numerous stories about him. Numerous, from Hollywood actors, famous Hollywood actors. And what did Hollywood do? And what does Hollywood still do? They still say, oh, but they're just accusers, they're just telling stories. So what's the difference between Bryan Singer and Harvey Weinstein? There's just as many boys for Singer as there are for Weinstein. And those were children, who didn't choose to enter, didn't choose to walk up. Not that that makes it any better, but children, again, special kind of hell. It's harder to come forward. Why are we giving a different kind of weight? Why are we choosing our accusers? So what I said in that Oscars 2018 thing was, why Weinstein? And I said, my suspicion is his films. It's the type of films that he does. They weren't propaganda. Now, what I knew is that his were the only films that hadn't changed in the last 20 years. What I didn't know was I hadn't started watching China Uncensored yet. And now I have. And this morning, I don't know why it took me so many times to finally click. But this morning, I watched, not for the first time, I watched an episode about Hollywood on China Uncensored. And now you know how often I've reported about Hollywood in China. Numerous times now. And I've talked about it on my channel. But this time it finally clicked for me. He had a guest on that was talking about how the Chinese Communist Party actually calls it a culture war. They call it a culture war. They are waging a culture war on America, on America's culture, and they are dictating to American filmmakers what to say about America and to not depict American culture in films. And I thought of what I said in my Oscars movie. I featured the station agent for that week's Insider Movies, forgetting that it was a Weinstein film. I was just like, so let's do the station. What movies make me feel better? Okay, well, we did My Girl Friday, and then we did The Station Agency. And then I was like, oh crap, that's a freaking Weinstein film. Well, okay, you'll see what I mean. You'll see why I think that he got booted. Boy, was I like, still didn't connect it, but I didn't know. And now we learned that in Hollywood, the Chinese Communist Party won't even let Richard Gere get hired because he made those comments about Tibet, about freeing Tibet from communist China rule. It's its own country. And they just came through and they slaughtered the Dalai Lama's monks, peaceful people. And even Brad Pitt, like, it's kind of on their list because he did a movie about that, about a young soldier who saw the Dalai Lama and saw what the Communist Party did. You know, and we are to the point where TED Talks is featuring apologists for the Communist Party and putting people in the audience that will stand and give it a standing ovation, saying that democracy is awful and that a one-party system is the way to go, and just lying throughout it, not talking about Falun Gong. I mean, let's talk about some things that people don't talk about. Like, you know, like, I'll bring it up again. First of all, that Chris Chappell brought up an excellent point. He said, so let me get this straight. So Hollywood can bash America all it wants to. It'll get up on the stage and bash America, bash it to high heavens, say anything it wants to about America. Just say it's the worst country in the world. You know, like Bill Ayers, I just watched that Dinesh D'Souza debate again, and he was like, you know, we have no right. We can do better. We have no right. We should be for being, you know, the most, for being having the largest pay gap in the industrialized world. And, you know, Dinesh didn't respond to that. And now I find out that that's total bull. Like, China is the second largest economy. And it has, I mean, you just think that's awful. Then you find out we have 72 government programs. You know, we're more socialist than Canada. You know, all of our legal aid goes to undocumented workers now. You cannot get hired if you're a conservative. I'm finding out over and over that for more than 20 years, like conservatives, you can't get hired at a law firm. I'm realizing that all of my conservative friends from college, if they went to, I've been going through it with my friends and they've been asking me, and I'm realizing they all started their own law firms. In fact, their parents who were conservatives, their parents own their own law firms. I wonder how long that's been going on. Didn't know that was going on. I've learned that if you're on a Hollywood set and you accidentally let it slip that you're not a liberal, if you were scheduled to be on the entire series, you get cut back to 2 days with a non-speaking line. We have it in the Constitution. In the Constitution, a civil war, or a civil right, and entire people were sprayed down in the streets over those civil rights over that. So that it says in there in black and white, you cannot be discriminated against. And people are like, well, that's hard to prove. I'm like, no, they tell them in the interviews, they say, oh, you know, you're so religious. You know, We think, they say blatantly in interviews, I've always thought that the religious just are averse to sex or something, like just right in the, and I'm just like openly hostile. Things that I am in awe. And I don't know if it's because they've just been feeding these churchgoers these little be nice, be kind things, and so they never sue. But I'm like, every time they don't sue, no wonder the rest of our civil liberties are being taken over. So come to think of it, I've never heard of a conservative suing. I'm trying to think if I can think of a conservative that sued. I heard that from the first time from Ben Shapiro. Like when I started watching those Ben Shapiro things or anything like that. Like, have you ever heard of a church suing? Ever? They must have had their civil liberties, like, robbed a million times. Or did they just think they're supposed to be martyrs or something? Like, why don't they think about the long shot about the rest of us and what it means for the rest of society? Because that becomes law. That becomes precedent for the rest of us. And it creates bullies of the worst kind. And I think that we have a big win. Anyway, so Tibet, let me go back to Richard Gere. Yeah, Richard Gere can't get hired in Hollywood because he said something about Tibet on a Hollywood stage. And I remember seeing that and being like, I remember I was so stupid. I mean, not stupid, but I remember seeing it and I was just exhausted about politics on the Hollywood stage. I was so tired. I was like, another political speech on the Hollywood stage, like another political speech. I just didn't want I wanted glitz and glamour. I didn't want politics. I was not interested in politics at all. I just didn't. And I didn't know anything about Tibet. I didn't care. But I just was like, where are my shiny dresses? You know what I mean? Like, I remember that. But I still would have been like, what the hell do you mean? We're in America. You can't get hired over it. Like, that's to me, that's breaking the law. And I think that, well, not breaking the law, but I think it's interesting that they won't do it because the Communist Party won't allow it. So I'm like, right, Hollywood isn't liberal. They're the Communist Party of China who rips out organs and discriminates against women. They're the worst human rights violator on the planet. I mean, the Middle East is pretty damn bad, but China has them beat. They are the worst human rights. Let me give you a little bit, like, here are some things that you may have missed. Like, about Falun Gong, maybe you don't or whatever, but let me give you the little things, like the little minutia of things that you may miss. Okay, about China, that just so you know, because Hollywood knows this stuff. They know it and they bow to it. Let me give you some things. All right, and these are the things, and from the things that I've seen, because didn't you notice that Harvey Weinstein went from big movies like Good Will Hunting? Did you notice that? That's all about American life. Good Will Hunting, Boston, totally captured American life. And what did I say about the station agent? I said, isn't that the best of us? I loved that movie because it was the best of us. And I heard those words, culture war, wiping out anything. And I was like, I know enough of Hollywood to know that everything clicked. And I was like, that's right. He wouldn't have bent the Communist Party's will. And it just all fit. And I was like, oh my God, they are me too. Like, they are me too. Like, they're me too. Like, you can see it in the mathematical way they've done everything. Like, the way they choose to give voices here and not there. And the way they're not compassionate. And the way that one guy, said beforehand, just everything, I know you guys know it, it's been more like a spider. It's been more like a spider than it's been like a loving, compassionate movement at all. It's been so, it's been so calculating. And it went after the only guy that refused to cave to the Communist Party in Hollywood. And then kept it from the Oscars. You know, the Oscars, which would be the biggest place to push everything that they're pushing. You know, because the Oscars had the lowest ratings of all. You know what? Everyone doesn't understand that. But I understand that. I understand why the Communist Party would want the Oscars to be the lowest ratings ever. You know why? Because the Oscars are the pinnacle of American society. That would be a success to them. If they are waging a culture war against America, the Chinese Communist Party would want their ratings to die. They would want us to hate the Oscars. They would want us to hate our celebrities. So they pay our celebrities to say the things we hate the most. They would pay our celebrities to say the things that we don't agree with, to say and flash things and do things. Brad Pitt building things in New Orleans and then sending materials that don't work. Yeah, Agenda 21 materials. Who sent those materials over? Who made them? China. And now Brad Pitt, Mr. Apple Pie, his face is mud. Another Americana, blue-eyed boy, married to Jennifer Aniston, then Angelina Jolie, gone. Mr. Do-Gooder around the world, Mr. Human Rights, gone. Smashed. That's my Taz cat. Hey, Tazzy! Come up here, baby boy, and get some pets. Come get pets with Mama. Come here, baby boy. It gets that way if there's a coyote or something outside. Because, yes, I get coyotes out here. Just like California had. Yeah, some things don't change. Anyway. God, I just wondered if China had coyotes. Anyway, they're just so prevalent. They're everywhere. They're in our universities. They're everywhere. They're in our government. They're in our local governments. They're in everything. And they've done that on purpose. And they've just done it through money because we have made sure that we've kicked out every single thing that values anything but money. We've called it bad. We've just put the almighty dollar at the top and worshipped it. So, of course, that was just it. Like, they could just take over. We didn't worship freedom. We didn't worship freedom. We didn't value it. If we did, that might mean, like, we had to like our troops or something. Hell no, can't do that. Can't like our troops. Nope. So it has to be the dollar. Anyway. So I just put it together after all of that. I can't believe this. 20 minutes in. I was telling all this to my husband. And I was just like, so here are the things I said on social media. I said this, and I said this, and I said this, and I said this, and I said, you know, and all this about democracy, you know, and they want to destroy everything about democracy. And that's the thing, is that, you know, and we still believe in democracy. I said, except for maybe your kids, you better check with your kids because they were raised in a socialist society and they were raised on a socialist and I just, my brain just broke. And I just was like, because I was like, they're raised in a socialist society, they were raised in a socialist education system, and they were raised on a socialist social media platform, socialist social media, social, and they did it. They did it. Did you ever notice the social in social media? That was on purpose. I've made arguments before that Facebook is really just socialism. Social media is the mob mentality. Democracy is obeying the law. Remember I said we've become like China? Because China gets mob mentalities, and like if someone, they get all upset and then they just mob justice. They do mob justice. They get angry and they get in a mob and they just hang people and they lynch people in mobs. Well, no, we were like trial. You need evidence. You go through a trial. No, we're not like that because of social media. We now do justice by mob, just like the Me Too movement. Just like so many things. And you talk to your kids and you'll find out that most of the time they're ready to convict people because they feel something, not because they want evidence. And that's the difference between democracy. We spent thousands of years becoming a civilization, and the civilization was based on Renaissance thought that said, give me evidence, think it through. And communism came through and told our kids, go with what you feel, because it's so easy to manipulate people with feelings. That's mob mentality, and it almost brought down Europe completely. That's what fascism was based on, and that is what communism is based on, and a mob mentality is how almost all of Russia died, and how almost just 45 million people in China wiped out, and they called it the Great Leap Forward. And communism was born not a little over 100 years ago, you guys. Communism hasn't been around that long. And what has it done? Mobs and death, blood. And we didn't even catch it when they introduced social networks. The final chapter in UN 21, the ultimate community, where we judge each other and we decide what we wear based on whether or not the community says it's best, not on whether or not we, the individual, believes it's best or likes it best. We spent thousands of years as humans learning that the only way to survive without war, famine, or millions of deaths and dictatorial rulers and lords over, the only way to get everyone to prosper is to value the individual, for the individual to thrive. It took us forever to figure that out. For individuals to thrive, to value the individual, it took us thousands of years of thought. And communism wiped that out. Excuse me. All right, I have no idea what I was saying. Had to take care of Tazzy. I think I was saying something about thousands of years to figure out to value the individual. You know what? And to figure it's the individual in order for us to survive together peacefully. And they undid it with communism because it values the group. And you know what? I just have to say this. I have been making the argument that the social networks made us antisocial. You can see it when you go to a dinner table and people aren't talking, they're at their phones. And if you go around and actually talk to the people, I've been trying to get involved in Instagram a little bit lately. And I'm like, none of these people actually talk to anybody. Have you noticed that on Instagram? They don't actually talk to each other. They go around and they sit around and they like, and they click like. But if you go around and actually try to meet those people, like when's the last time you've traveled the world and tried to talk to any of those people? No, everyone's just living for that like. Everyone's just living in the morning trying to get that perfect photo, to get a like, to get their adrenaline rush. Nope, that's not socialism. That's not being social. that's just being a narcissist. It brings out narcissism. That's not being more social. It means you're making friends in order to get likes. You know, you're making friends who are like, you're making things like that. Maybe you sing things. You're following people in order to see things that you like, in order to build up things that you like and have things in your feed that you enjoy. Are you building relationships with those people? You're not. You're building things that you like. You're building your little world. You're just the more friends that you make, you're insulating world with people who are like you. You're not building a world, you know, where people disagree with you. I am magically building this community on YouTube. I think about these magic things that we've done on YouTube. That's why they shut it down, because it's not what it's designed for. We're the aberration. We're these glitches in the matrix that we were not supposed to happen. We're not supposed to be designed for, and we're fighting against it. That's why it's amazing. One commentator said, you know, they own the education system, and who owns it? The socialists do. The socialists, and I would say the Communist Party do. The Communist Party, and you know what? I would very much say that, you know, Islam isn't all that different from socialism. You know, they're extremely, they say it's ultra right wing of Islam, but oh my gosh, look at that, how they rule just like a socialist organization. You know, it's not all that different. You know, imams at the top, and they just, not all that different. They're a group. They operate as a group. They have no individual thought. You're not supposed to think as an individual. You listen to interviews with them on the street, and they tell you, you know, I'm not supposed to think. I'm not supposed to have doubt. If you think, that is against Allah's will. You read the Quran, says the same freaking thing. Hey, that's not developing individual. Not supposed to dress like an individual. You have a dress code. Do you see what I'm saying here? So now we have two cultures coming in. Like, let me give you a little hint on the Chinese Communist Party. Some things that you may not know. Let me just give you hints. If you're thinking it's just the Chinese Communist Party and it's just the Falun Gong, let me tell you what life is like for an actual Chinese person. They have 5-6 time zones in China. You go to jail if you don't have your clock, your watch set to Beijing time. A man in the middle of China got sent to jail as a terrorist threat because his watch was set 2 hours past Beijing time. Because that's where Mao is buried. They say, oh, by Mao's name, because Mao is God. You know, the guy who wiped 45 million off the planet in his lifetime. You know who else is antisocial? I say that social networks are antisocial. You know who else was antisocial? Gosh, Lenin, Mao, Hitler, all the socialist, you know, Badero, all these socialist kings. You know, NG, who puts this nice happy lipstick on a pig. But you know what? G's brilliant because he doesn't act, you know, he doesn't actually ever do the work himself. He's smart enough to just let the money go out there, our money that we're paying them. You know, if you have to shop on Amazon, freaking do the paid in USA. I looked on there to see if like, if you have to buy a soccer ball, buy Franklin for heaven's sakes. I see kids that are 8 years old, they're reviewing soccer balls, and they're like, man, this Franklin ball, man, like, I've been playing with it. And he actually, like, showed, he didn't know it's because it was made in America, but he's, like, comparing the two balls. He's like, see, soft, hard, soft, hard. I would never take this ball into the street. This ball I can take in the street. I've had this ball all summer long, and you can barely tell it's like brand new. And I'm like, yeah, it's made in the USA. Say it's actually cheaper than the China ones. Like this lie that made in America is actually more expensive. I'm like, why? It has to be shipped to get here across an entire ocean. And by the way, that ocean is bigger than the Atlantic. Why? You know, it's already here, and we have regulations here. They don't have regulations there. You know, like, imagine what the workers go through, and 9 out of 10 luxury of the top luxury brands are sold there, so when everyone's like, oh, don't buy counterfeit because, you know, oh, of human rights violations, and I'm like, all the other brands are made there. You know, like, try and invest in ones that are still made in a non-human rights violating country. Not easy to find, but you can find them. You know how you can tell? You can tell by the quality. Just like Made in America, you can made in the quality. Sorry, vintage. I'm just like, oh, feels good. I don't know. It was a really big thing for me. I'll have to make a separate video about the socialists and socialism because this ended up being really long, as it always is. And I also want to apologize. I'm realizing that I'm not looking good, and I finally realized why. I know I did my 6-week update, but I've been talking with my friends and my trainers, and I finally realized, like, I'm looking like my videos before my procedure, and that's because I'm past the time when I was supposed to get the injection. I remember, like, I was supposed to get it. She said, like, oh, we'll get it done at this mark, right? And then for some reason it didn't get scheduled at that mark. And I don't know what happened. I don't know why. I don't know if it's her schedule or what happened, but it did not get scheduled at that time. And I'm past it. And I'm like, oh, and like my mobility's been gone. Like that's why I haven't filmed in weeks. And I think it's because I'm so bad that I faded really fast towards the end of it. It was the same way with the SI joint. Like if I get anywhere near towards the end, I go vroom. The same way with my meds. 20 minutes before my next round of meds, man, 20 minutes before I go vroom, and I don't even catch it. Like sometimes other people have to catch it. And my friends had caught me going downhill, but I was like, not until I filmed my 6-week update, and I was like, man, I look awful. I look awful, and I haven't been able to, like, I haven't been out again. Like my last time I've been out was Labor Day weekend. Even though I got better, even after the flu thing, I haven't been out walking. I haven't even been out driving. Like, I think I got out it was rough. I was able to do a bunch of doctor's appointments, but it kicked my butt again. And I'm looking like this, and I'm just like, ugh. And I can just see that I'm going backwards really fast. Well, that's the other thing, is that the pain has been excruciating, and I'm not cycling, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, what the hell's going on? That's what's been really scaring me, and my legs have been like pins and needles. And so, anyway, there's just been some stuff. So I'll have to tell you guys that in another video. So anyway, that's just other stuff for another time. But I love you, and I want to thank you for your thoughts and prayers, because, God, I'm going to cry. So I want to thank you for that, though. Whatever myriad of things that you're doing, thank you, because you did whatever it was you did. And I was thinking about, like, what it was you could have done, because there are so many of you of all different kinds, you know what I mean? And I was like, what could it have been? And I realized that the difference is that you all love me. I realized that was the thing you all share, is that you all love me. And I was just like, oh, crap. Like, that really changed my view of love. I mean, I already had a view of love, but you guys kind of revolutionized my roof. Okay, I better go. But you revolutionized my view of love yesterday, and I want to thank you for that. So thank you for loving me. All right, I better go. Anyway, think about that. Social networks and socialism and antisocial, and the role of the individual versus the community. That's what they did. Social networks made us a part of a community and made us put our entire value and made us regulate our entire decision-making process. Our entire decision-making process by comments in the community. And the thing is that then they control the comments. They got us. And they got us freaking good.